So once you've downloaded that folder, you're going to need to actually open a new project. Sorry, hang on a sec. I'm going to share my screen. So in Photoshop, I'm going to create a new document. I'm going to use the film and video preset called HDTV 720p. It doesn't actually matter at this stage which preset you use, but that's the one I'm going to use. Okay, so I've created a new, let me set this back to the default workspace so that you're looking at it the same way that I am. Okay, so this is what Photoshop will look like when you create that new project. And this is the default Photoshop workspace. But you're going to need to change the workspace. In Premiere, the workspaces are all listed at the top edge of the screen. The workspaces in Photoshop are in the window menu in the workspace submenu. So we're going to switch the workspace to motion, first of all. And you can see straight away it gives you more of a Premiere looking workspace. So you've got this timeline down here, although there isn't anything in there just yet. But before we put anything in, I want to show you this menu. So the three little lines which appear to the top right of pretty much every window. I always call it the fast menu. It used to be called the fast menu, or maybe that was on a specific software, but that's what I call it. And I think, I don't know, maybe it's called like the options menu for that particular window. But the timeline's got its own settings menu here, which is grayed out until you've got a clip in there. But the fast menu is always available. So it's the options for that particular tab. And you want to make sure that this one, timeline shortcut keys, is enabled. So it should have a tick next to it. So this is, by default, it doesn't have a tick next to it. And I want you to go into that fast menu and click it once and make sure it does have a tick next to it. If it does have a tick and you click it, then you switch it off. So make sure it does have a tick next to it when you open that window. Okay, then go to the layer menu, video layers, new video layer from file. So there's two ways. You may be used to using layers in Photoshop. You may have never used Photoshop before in your life, but when you use Photoshop, you've got layers stacked up, and it's only the same as the video layers on Premiere. So normally when you create a new layer, through the layer menu, it's just a still image. But we're going to create video layers. So because we're in the motion workspace and we're working with video layers, it starts to function a lot like Premiere. So layer, video layers, new video layer from file. So there's two ways of making a new video layer. One is to import a video clip, which is new video layer from file. One is to create an empty one, which is new blank video layer. And we're going to do both. New video layer from file first. And you're going to need to navigate to the folder that we just downloaded and find your way to the Lightsaber clip and press open. Now that should be the same size as the canvas that we've created. Yes, it is. And as soon as you create that, you've now got a clip on your timeline here, and that has opened up the options for the settings in the timeline. So the only one that you might want to change is to turn on loop playback. By default, it's switched off, but I think it's really useful to have that switched on. Now that we've imported a clip into the timeline, you can go back into the fast menu and set the timeline frame rate to, we could do like 12. 12 is the traditional frame rate for animation. And what we're doing today is rotoscoping, which is basically animating directly onto video. So rotoscoping is used, the term rotoscoping is used now also to refer to animating masks on video. So like the way a green screen takes out the entire green background of an image, so it just leaves the subject. You can also draw around the subject and remove them from any image. So we could completely remove Henry from this image and put him on on a Star Wars spaceship, whatever, if we wanted to, but we would have to animate that frame by frame. There is some AI ways to sort of help you do that, but it's still a painstaking process. We're not going to do that today. We're going to just make that lightsaber light up. But if you set the frame rate to 12 frames per second, there'll be many fewer frames to animate. So that's why they did that traditionally. They project it at 24 frames per second, but the way they filmed, or the way they animated at 12 frames per second, was to expose 2 frames in a row. So it's just like cuts your workload in half. But we can just, the way we're going to do it is just set it to 12 frames per second. Okay, so press OK, and you can see that clip's halved in length, or like it's 40% of the length now, because it was 30 frames per second. So we've got many fewer frames to animate. And if you look at the play controls here, if you press play, you'll notice that this kind of teal color render bar appears in it. Oh, we can mute that. We do not need to hear me saying okay. But you can see every time I pause and press play again, it leaves a little gap, and then that fills in. If it was a much higher frame rate or a higher resolution, there'd be lots and lots of gaps, and every time it plays through it, it fills those in. And what it's doing is creating a preview render just so that it plays more smoothly. Okay, so we'll have the lightsaber turn on, 3 lasers being deflected away, and then switch off again. Excellent acting. Okay, so now that we've got that layer in, we need to create a new blank video layer. So because I've been playing and pausing this clip, the red playhead is not at the start. I just want to take this opportunity to show you something. So remember just now we turned on timeline shortcut keys. That allows you to move through the clip frame by frame, which is really useful for what we're going to be doing. And by default, for some reason, that is not enabled. So by default, when you press left and right, the whole image moves a pixel to the left or a pixel to the right for some reason. It should just have that as the default, if you ask me. And then you can press the up or the down arrow to get you back to the very beginning. So no matter where you are in the clip, if you press the up or the down arrow, you get back to the beginning. So with the playhead back at the beginning, and that's important because I'll show you what happens if it's halfway through. Go to the layer menu, video layers, new blank video layer this time. It will create the same duration clip. Photoshop sometimes does things in a very odd way. So it's helpfully given us the exact same duration clip, but started it halfway through. Who knows why? So we'll move it back. If your playhead's at the start and you do that, then you create a new blank video layer, and it lines up perfectly. So in the layers menu here, I'm going to click on layer 1 and press this little padlock. That's important. So write that down. If you're writing down the steps, write that down. Why? Because if you rotoscope directly onto layer 1, then it's destructive in the sense that you're destroying part of the image of layer 1, and you can't get that back except by going through the undo. Why you look at them, so even if you accidentally. So yeah, exactly. So if I do what I'm gonna do now to layer 1, it gives me this pop-up. Could not use the brush tool because the layer is locked. If the layer wasn't locked, then I would destroy part of the image that we're trying to use. Whereas if it's on a blank video layer, it's non-destructive. It's just there in addition to the clip that we're using. So we can always remove it, edit it, go back to the original, etc. I'm going to lock layer 3. I've made layer 2 and layer 3. I haven't actually told you to do that. I just did that to demonstrate something, but I'm going to leave layer 3 there because, oh no, I'll delete it actually, because then it's more like what you'll be doing. So you should just have background layer, layer 1, layer 2. Background and layer 1 should both be locked. And whichever layer you've got selected is the one that you're working on. So it won't let me. Oh, it does seem to be letting me. So it won't let me draw on layer 1. We're going to be drawing on. So you need to set, this is the toolbar down the left here. You need to select the paintbrush tool. And then in the setting, mine is this crazy brush, which I need to change now. So in the settings, you can choose the first preset, which is called soft round, and set the size to probably about 30 pixels, something like that. And then maybe change the hardness to about 50%, something like that. Yeah, it could be a little bit smaller actually. I'm going to say 25 pixels size and still 50% hardness. Okay. To change the color of the brush, you click on this. Down here, you've got 2 squares. I think when you open a new project, they're both white. It looks like one is above the other, so that's the foreground color. So if you click on that, it opens up a color picker. But actually, we do want white. I'll show you why in a moment. So I've just moved the playhead to halfway through just to make my demonstration easier. What you'll need to do to create the lightsaber is follow these steps carefully. Hold down, write these down if you want to. Hold down Shift. With Shift held down, click once at the base of the lightsaber, just above Henry's hands. So I've clicked once. I'm no longer touching the mouse, but I am still holding down Shift. Your mouse to the top of the stick so that the corner of the stick is roughly in the center of the circle. Let me zoom right in so I can show you that. So the corner of the stick is roughly in the center of the circle of the brush tool. Oops, that's because I let the Shift button. So hold down Shift, click once at the base, click a second time here. Now move to the opposite corner so that the corner of the stick is in the center of the circle. Click a third time and then move back to the base and try as hard as you can to line up your circle exactly where you clicked it first time. But you don't have to be zoomed in for that. Yeah, exactly. So the reason it's a triangle and not a straight line is because it's almost always in motion, and the pivot of the motion is Henry's wrists, and the most motion blur occurs at the tip of the lightsaber. So actually the frame I've started on is almost totally still, but it still looks, I think it looks kind of better to have a triangle shape, even if it's just a very slight triangle shape. Let me find a frame where there's lots of motion blur. Okay, here's one. So this frame will do in exactly the same way. Hold down Shift, click once at the base, a second time with the tip of, this time it's the motion blur that you're looking for the corner of. The corner of the motion blur of the tip of the lightsaber, then the other corner, and then back at the starting. Now that one's left a little wedge shape of see-throughness. So you can let go of Shift and just freehand color that in with the brush if you want to. Or if it was a big wedge shape, a quicker way to do it, once you get into the swing of doing it frame after frame after frame, is to fill it with the paint bucket tool. In this particular frame, it's not really worth doing that. But if it was a bigger wedge shape, created, then using the paint bucket tool to fill in the bulk of the wedge shape, and then holding shift again, do exactly the same thing on the middle part. That's kind of the quickest way to do it. Let's see if there is a frame with lots and lots of motion blur. I don't think there is actually, but. Okay, so this is what a lightsaber looks like when it's in motion. It's a triangle shape. And actually, I think, let's do another frame here. So look at the motion blur on Henry's hands. That's crazy. That's how fast. He's moving faster than the rest of us can because he's a Jedi. So you still just click once though, then again up here, third time, and then back at the start. Go to the paint bucket tool and fill in, then go back to the brush and repeat the 4 clicks to make the triangle, just to fill in there. So that's a good amount of motion blur. It looks good. Yeah, that's great. It's not a straight line, it's a triangle. Okay, so to make it a lightsaber instead of just a white triangle, you double click on the layer 2, not the word layer 2. That will invite you to rename that layer. But you can either do it on the thumbnail or to the right of the word. And it brings up the layer style options. Now you need to choose outer glow, but not just tick the checkbox for outer glow, but actually click on the word outer glow, and that will give you the setting. If you just click on the checkbox, it will switch it on, but it won't show you the settings. It just leaves it on the basic blending options settings. If you click on the word outer glow, then you get to see the outer glow settings. So, what colour lightsaber do you want, Henry? Okay. So to get red, you click on there's a square of colour there. Click on it. Use the colour picker. When I use the colour picker, I tend, where possible, to click randomly in the middle of it and then drag the cursor to the part I want. And if I want a solid colour, I drag beyond the square, just so I know that that circle of the colour picker is as far in the corner as it can be. Okay, so you can experiment with, you can choose a colour that you like yourself, doesn't matter what colour, and then you can experiment with the opacity slider, is kind of how bright it's going to be. The spread slider is how sort of sharp in focus it's going to be, but also the size, it's the size of it. The size slider increases the size, but in a different way. It kind of also makes it softer. So you can decide where you want those sliders to be, whether you want it. Yes, please.
Why is the actual light not red? I've not watched Star Wars. Are they all white and then the middle of it's not red? Or?
So basically, they're white because they're burning out. Like the exposure of the camera is being burnt out, right? So they might look. I don't know the answer. But
when we play it, will it look red or white?
It'll look white, but with a red glow.
Oh right, and that's what it is.
But you can. Let's have a look at a picture of a lightsaber. No, it's a good question. It's a good question.
You picked white for the light, didn't you? But I just wondered why you didn't look red.
Yeah, so it's referring maybe more to like the original 3 films.
White, yeah, I can see that now. What? It's got like an outer glow, isn't it?
Yeah.
I really want to get my.
But you could, if you wanted to, for like, if you didn't want to make a lightsaber, you could something like you could pick whatever colour you wanted.
Yeah. You could pick whatever colour you wanted to.
We'll just change it each time.
They actually do this in Disney World.
Yeah, I can see that one there.
Oh, raise it up.
No, you can make your.
I want to get a still from the film now.
Change his colour every single frame.
No, that would just give someone.